This is a Zenolink data view analysis for Paul Gruber. This is for a throw. We're going to look again at our performance profile to begin with. Here looking again at the ability to utilize peak output at ball release. So we're looking at for our arm speed at release. We're looking at the speed at which the wrist is moving at release, which is right on our normal. Internal rotation speed, however, is what we what creates that movement. So it's the internal rotation of the shoulder that creates this distal end speed combined with the extension of the elbow. So this is quite low, although arm speed is right on our normal average. The internal rotation speed is quite low. And so what that indicates is that although the distal end speed is being accomplished, it's being accomplished through compensation, which not only reduces performance output, but also, especially with throwing, potentially increases the risk of injury. We see that our hips and shoulder speed are our two primary power speed generators, hips and upper torso. For the most part, they're low, or I should say below the norms, but not that bad. So they're off the norm, off the median, off the mean, I should say, but they're reasonable. Let's take a look at the dynamic. Okay, so what you have here is actually pretty good basic throwing mechanics. The lower body drives the upper torso very nicely. It certainly could improve our speeds, and a connection always can be improved, but very nice general throwing mechanic. Arm dynamic also looked very good, but the big thing here is that you'll see that Paul loads the shoulder too late. You see, so that really you want the arm in closer to a 90-90 type position. So you'll see you want the shoulder to be a little bit more in this kind of position, not perfectly straight up, but he's at 0 degrees external rotation. He's going to go into upwards of 150 plus degrees of rotation in a very short period of time. That shoulder needs to be ready to set. So, and he keeps it as he's now moving through the core. He keeps that elbow down. The arm down, external rotation at neutral, maybe even a little internally rotated, which is delaying the process of load. Now he's going to start to try to get into that's a position he should have been in way long time ago. So he's very late. He's not even in 90 degrees of external rotation. Now he's at about 90 degrees of external rotation. He's got a long way to go in a very short period of time. So what's happening here, for the most part, is that there's a significant delay in the loading process, which looks fine but is delayed, which means that the acceleration process, you'll see peak speed is right on a norm. The peak speed, however, occurs after ball delivery because the process is so delayed. Right here, at this point in time, the arm should be already in at least 140 to 150 degrees of external rotation, and he never really gets there. Now he's getting into some external rotation, but now he's already got to let go of the ball. So he's letting go of the ball. His arm is still in quite a bit of external rotation, and he's not getting the benefit of that speed. So he's working way harder to get the distal end speed. With respect to stride, of course, this is pitch mechanics versus throw mechanics, but stride is pretty close to what we would expect. That, to me, means that his stride's a little long, sort of like it wasn't hitting. Not overly too long, but definitely a little long for a general throw. As far as our core stability goes, lower body stability goes, we've got a little too much knee flexion. So if we pull up the video here, what you'd like to see is as his foot comes into contact with the ground, you'd like to see the knee as close to about a 45 to 50 degree angle as possible, and then you want that knee to stabilize. What Paul tends to do is come in with a fairly straight leg and then bend the knee as he's throwing. You can see it's subtle, but you can see he's continuing to compress on the lead side. So that impacts arm dynamic, core stability, all kinds of different things. And then what he does is we'll sort of straighten up on that leg just a little bit as he's starting to throw, and that is because he's not internally rotating as effectively. You'd like to see that plant knee pretty much straight across with maybe a little extension at the end so we can improve lead leg stability through improved lower body mechanics, improved functional movement, and stride dynamics in general. Core stability is pretty close to what you would expect. So generally throwing from a fairly effective vantage point as far as core stability goes. Overall, throwing mechanics are quite good. The big thing is to utilize the lower body a little bit more effectively to create more stability, more dynamics in the lower body. And then the big thing then is arm dynamic and getting the arm more connected to what the body's doing, because the body's doing a pretty good job. We'll do a quick look at our loading. Core loading is great. Now again, what you're going to see is if you improve the lower body mechanics, what you're going to see is more of this kind of action with a more efficient transfer. This reacceleration should occur a little bit later. And we want a little bit more decel between the segmental components, and that's something we can train very easily. That's just going to improve efficiency and power output. With respect to loading, again, what you're going to see here is too much elbow bend. So you've got typically, like, see about roughly 90 degrees of elbow bend or elbow flexion, creating the largest moment arm on the shoulder, and we have Paul's up at 132. External rotation is fine. However, at release, there's way too much external rotation. We're over 100 degrees of external rotation, and that's because this peak external rotation occurs way too late. You would expect to see that sooner, so that the shoulder could go through its dynamic of internally rotating and creating a more effective dynamic, and then also the elbows too bent. Let's pull up the video one more time. If we go back to loading, the elbow is way too bent. This action is taking away from the load on the shoulder and is also putting the elbow at risk for injury, because the more bent and supinated the elbow, the less stability at the medial aspect against valgus extension. So that's going to put the elbow at risk, and it's going to put the shoulder at risk, and it's going to detract from power. You want the arm to be a little bit closer to 90. So there's some dynamics we can work on there. Again, I would say a lot, some lower body, some core, but mostly a lot of arm dynamic is what we're looking at. The last thing we'll just take a quick look at is how the speed's being delivered. Now remember, this is in comparison to pitching, but generally speaking, this is good. We're using 98% of our peak output. Most of that is towards where we're throwing, with a little bit of downward and a little bit of outside in dynamic, and that's exactly what we would expect, especially for this throw as opposed to pitching, which is a little bit more downward, because obviously pitching down a mound. So this is dynamic is great. We just want to create a better internal rotation dynamic, more efficient, more powerful, and also protect the elbow and the shoulder.